Hey everyone, thanks for joining me. This is Tom Christie at d20play.com. I wanted to share with you some proposals I have for Adventurers League, just ideas that, from playing, I see. I've boiled these down to 2 pages of rules. So take all the players' guides, all the DM's guides, and just do 2 pages. Make it super easy to have this on hand for players of any AL character to have at their fingertips. So you can see the layout with the 2 pages, and then I also provided a reasoning for the proposals on the 3rd page and on in this document. And you can find this document on my website, d20play.com, under AL Rules Proposal.pdf. So let's get to it. This is the layout, so I'm going to skip ahead to the reasoning, which repeats all of these rules. Okay, so my main goals. Onboard more players, more DMs, make it easier to play and DM, reduce paperwork, ensure no player has to be turned away from an adventure due to not having the right character, ensure players can create and experiment with the characters they want to play, allow more adventures with fewer changes, promote seasonality. I think I have a simple way there to do that across all active seasons. So if you like anything you see in here, pick and choose the things you like. Let Wizards of the Coast know. There's the support uh, web URL to send in requests, and a link to my latest proposal. So I change this often, the ZL rules proposal, and there is where you can find a copy of it. Okay, so let's look rule by rule why I made the changes, or why I proposed the changes. Replacing all players' guides and DM guides with one. Of course, that'll just make onboarding easier, make it easier to play, obviously. Easier to find the rules to make sure your character is compliant. Players being able to have characters across all campaigns will make sure that we don't have to turn a player away because they don't have the right character for the right campaign. Conventions will have an easier time filling tables, or they won't have to force players to start new characters or regens, which can be, distasteful to players. Um, Players themselves talked about keeping characters compliant. We can differentiate the campaigns by the rewards, not the rules for character development. And it's easier to balance power levels by setting limits on characters than by policing all adventures campaigns. So if you have the same limits across all characters, it's easier to keep track of that. Okay, sources. So here I've basically added all the rule sources that are allowed across all the campaigns of Adventurers League. And if optional rules are allowed, they're noted as well. These are all basically all the resources currently across all campaigns. It'll make it easier for players to create and experiment with the characters they want, which I think is a great move for Adventures League. Now it will require some, explanation of strange races and classes, but they just become that much more mysterious if that happens. You'll note I excluded the customizing your origin from Tasha's Cauldron and everything because it's replicated in the character creation section below, and I updated the proficiency swaps to balance the armor weapon proficiencies, which can make for, being basically proficient in every tool if a character were to do that. I've included the optional class features from Tasha's Cauldron and everything. I see I pointed out to use the replacement option. I think that's much more balanced than just adding them to every character, so I'd recommend that. All right, character creation. So here's one thing that'll be controversial. Create new characters at any level. I'm a big proponent of letting the players play the characters they want to play and balancing that in other ways, as we'll see below. But if a person is new to D&D, level 1 is of course recommended. Now, if this wasn't accepted in total, this could be, create characters at level 1 or level 5 like we currently have, or level 1, level 5, and level 11. But I would highly recommend any level. Use standard array, that's no different. Reassigning racial ability scores, so this is the customizing your character. So skills with skills, for proficiencies, all armor weapons replaced with a single tool or tools with different tools. Hit points are the same, starting equipment is the same. One change is that it can't be sold, but it could be discarded, of course. And I'll talk about why that is here in a minute. Choose non-lethal alignment. That's the same in some campaigns, not others. And with rebuilds being allowed at any time, which I think is a great thing also in AL, it really makes spellbooks and tracking, all the minutiae of adding spells to spellbooks kind of moot, because now a character can just change the spells in their spellbook at any time. So I'd recommend something along these lines where, you got spellbooks, ritual books, books of shadow. some sort of total spell levels of spells across those books. Okay, so player control increased, high level adventure content, with any level, will see more play and greater sales for their creators. I'm sure that high level adventure content doesn't see a whole lot of sales right now because very few players get up to tier 4. Um, ensure no players turned away, ensure players can create and experiment with the characters they want to play, keep it kid friendly with the alignment, and as I spoke, rebuilds always allowed. Kind of makes a necessity for some other way to do spellbooks. Okay, rebuilds. Um, no change there, just specifies you can change anything in character creation above here. Gaining, losing levels, another controversial thing, and this goes along with creating your character at any level, is you can increase or decrease your character level between adventures to any level. Of course, if you increase it, you don't get any extra equipment, so it'll take a little bit of time to catch up. If you decrease it, you need to abide by tier limits. So if you went from tier 2 to tier 1, you'd have to discard some equipment, potentially, some gold potentially, and some magic items potentially. This just gives more player control over advancement. High-level adventure content will see more and greater sales, more player and greater sales, and no player will be turned away from a game. So again, with this controversial one, it could be tailored to what AL desires. So if characters can't be created at any level, or if we want to say you must play 2 adventures to go up a level, or 1 adventure at tier 1 and two more at tiers 2 through 4, certainly something that could be put in there. But this is my recommendation. Just put all the power in the player's hands and control the level of the character power so it's balanced across all the players in another way. Gaining, losing equipment and gold, 20, 50, 200, or 800 gold per hour. Purchase equipment, accept potions of healing. So there's going to be another way to track that because there's limitation on the scope of how many potions can be out there below. Sell equipment, accept starting equipment for half its cost. Discard equipment gold anytime. Start an adventure with no more. So here's instead of by character level gain limit in how much gold you can gain, there's a cap here. And talk about that in a second here. So starting equipment is not included in this limit. So GP awards are bumped slightly at tier 2 to make theirs slightly different than tier 1. And tier 4 is just rounded to a round number. Potions of healing, we'll see below how they're handled. Level limits replaced with tier limits. With this in place, we could return gold to be actual treasure found in an adventure. But having initially hated the move to gold per hour, I now really like it because it's so much easier in the game to track that paperwork and just describe cool treasures that characters found and not worry about the minutia of every last point of gold. That's why I propose keeping with that. Starting equipment cannot be sold, nor is it tracked in total gold. This is to make it easier. The reason we're doing this, make it easier to rebuild characters at any time, change their starting equipment at any time, not have to track all that starting equipment in calculating this cap. Just make everything a little bit easier with starting equipment. Okay, gaining, losing magic items. So same as now, all characters gain all magic items found and retained at the end of adventure, and this will extend now to common items, it already does, and consumable items. Discard magic items at any time, same as now. Same benefit removed. Loan magic items during an adventure, returned at the end, same as now. Cannot permanently trade magic items, we'll talk about that below. Quote, purchase the following items. So these are like the free renown items kind of reskinned. And they're mostly the same. A few things moved around a little bit. But the idea is look at your next adventure. If it's tier 1, you can add as many of these as you want to your character, up to your tier limits. If your next adventure is tier 2, as many of these as you want, up to your tier limits, and up to also this number that your character could have total, so that we don't get, crazy, weird things happening with multiple characters taking the same items and trading them and loaning them out and just all that tracking of loaning and stuff like that. It'll simplify that. Some things moved around there. Okay, so now starting an adventure, here is the tier limits you're used to seeing 1, 3, 6, and 10 for permanent items, but boons and blessings are added to that, and consumable items have the same limitations. And then story awards, same as now, don't count. And then here's the first hint of the seasonal characters, and this is that seasonal characters get 1 extra item of the permanent magic items at all tiers until the end of the season. So let's look at the reasons. Mostly unchanged from now. Trading removed. So this is highly controversial, but trading was introduced at a time when the rules were much different for magic item finding and retention. And so combining them with the new rules for magic item finding and retention and replacement makes them pretty powerful. It also right now makes a big difference in power level between prolific players that have lots of characters and casual players that have like one character. The prolific players gain advantages for all the adventures they've played, and their character, who might be just as same character as Joe Blow, casual player, one character, instead he's armed to the teeth with the perfect magic items because the player has this bank of magic items to share with them. So by removing that, that'll make that every character advances with regard to that character's progression. While it's true everyone can trade, it's been my experience that most of the overpowering trades I've seen have been between PCs of the same player. It's no longer needed as a mechanism to get rid of undesired items. It's too powerful in combination with the ability to discard and replace items. It's created an arms race of sorts. So really, it's a good time to leave that behind, and it simplifies paperwork again. Okay, renown benefits adapted and available to all characters. Consumable magic items having a limit to keep them manageable. So we don't have like 50 potions of healing and keep the adventures challenging. Again, don't have 50 potions of healing. Common magic items count toward permanent limits. This is to reduce the large number and the sameness of them. You know, in season 10, it's like by the 10th adventure, all characters have the same 10 common magic items, and it's just kind of, hard to justify. Boons, blessings, etc. count as a permanent item to prevent cheating the magic item count. Right now they don't count, and some players can be more powerful for that than others, some characters. And finally, provide the simple seasonality benefit that can be used across multiple campaigns. Okay, usage limitations. So this is where a lot of the campaign catalog can be decreased because a lot of it right now has to deal with where a legendary item shows up in a tier 1 hardback or very rare in tier 1, etc. So this is all characters can have, but they cannot use permanent magic items, boons, blessings, etc. of high rarity. So tier 1 it's rare plus, tier 2 it's very rare plus, and tier 3 it's legendary. And of course by the time of tier 4 you can use anything. This doesn't include consumable or story items. This simplifies the legendary reservation system. It reduces paperwork and allows use of all adventures without worrying about overpowered items being included. And if we have an adventure catalog, which I think we'd still have to have, it could be greatly reduced in scope. All right, seasonal characters. So this is a character who is playing in the current season and has only played in that season. They could have one more permanent magic item, boon, blessing, etc. than standard limits. Once they jump out of that season into some other current season or in old historical adventures, then the cap comes down one item. They have to discard that one extra item they had, and now they're a historical character, not a seasonal character anymore. And this benefit will also end when the season ends that character started in. This provides a simple seasonality benefit that can be used across multiple campaigns. We got so many going right now. We got Season 10, Dreams of the Red Wizards, Eberron, Oracle of War, Miss Hunters, Kennel Keep Mysteries, etc., etc. We can even include seasons like the Moonshades and the Border Kingdoms that are happening in this kind of scope of what's a seasonal character. Story items. Pretty much the same as before. One copy can be usable when adventuring together. What they include, there'd be a list of what they include, and these are like the standard ones you normally see. The usage limitations, like we talked about above, will provide an opportunity to consider removing more and more items from this list. Then recovery. Okay, so at the end of an adventure, all characters that took part must share equally in the cost to return dead characters to life or cure other conditions that remove them from play. This is required even if the player no longer wants to play those characters, and the cost to do this is capped at half of the total gold found in the adventure. So, what's this do? This encourages teamwork. You're not going to let a character die, bleed out on the ground because you don't know the player, you're playing with them for the first time, etc. It reduces paperwork. You don't have to track the magic item count losses that players have to spend to bring characters back. It increases first-time player return rate. If they have a player die, or they had a friend who had a player die, their adventure is not for naught. They can come back next time and continue with the same character. The penalty is shared by all. It's not severe enough to hamper the PCs for the rest of their careers. It's automatic, so there's not this pressure to just start a new character, just give that one up. And lastly, rarely have I seen a PC die to that PC being dumb. It's most often some bad luck and then party ignoring them bleeding out on the ground. Okay, so that's recovery. Spellcasting services mostly the same as current. Downtime is removed. There is no longer any need to track it. No paperwork, trading's removed, spellbooks are simplified, leveling simplified. It can just go away. Logs. Make these dead simple as well. Really, what they need to do is list the adventure played, list what was gained, list what was lost. That's it. Very simplified paperwork. They could be kept as part of the notes section of a character sheet instead of having all these separate log sheets. And really, their main intent is the character sheet should always match the starting gear for the character, the logged gains, and the logged losses. Conversion. So converting an existing character to this current player's guide would be pretty simple. Just rebuild if desired, increase or decrease levels as desired. Change the banked legendary item to instead a possessed item. Purchase, sell, or discard equipment, gold, and magic as desired, or if required, if at tier maximums now. Revise spells and spellbooks, ritual books, books of shadow per the character creation section, and you're finished. It's very simple. A character can quickly, if they had to discard some items, they can quickly add items, by going on future adventures. No character needs to be without a magic weapon because we can gain those above, etc. And then add a little Q&A section. There's some common questions that often come up because the rules for Adventure League, they include limitations to maintain balance. So some of them are kind of a little bit arbitrary. And so here's some story explanations that can be used to make explanations for these arbitrary things that happen. What happened to the extra gold I found? Well, there's plenty of things that adventurers do not on the adventuring scene. The homes, castles, lands, livestock, taxed, stolen, lost, gambled away, etc. What happened to the magic item I discarded? It's traded, taxed, donated, stolen, broken, used up, returned to its owner. If after the first adventure 10 people have goggles of, or 6 people have goggles of night, well, there was really only one goggles of night, so the other ones must have been borrowed from somewhere. So you can kind of have those discussions in the background or thoughts in the background. Why can't I use a magic item yet with these limitations on rarities? It's too powerful. You're incapable of harnessing the magic used it. It's overpowering, debilitating to you, etc. Why was I forced to use gold for other characters to recover? So here's where give the player control over their story. The character didn't necessarily spend the gold to help. They could have helped, indeed, or the character remained dead and they donated to his family or their organizations, or they didn't help. And word gets around and they get fewer jobs, therefore they lose some gold from it. Or they're left, the character they left hanging takes revenge. They're taxed, robbed, price gouged, or in the future they're not helped when they're needed. So really, the mechanics are the gold goes away. The reasons for it, the player is in control of. And I speak a lot in all of this about what's an adventure. So an adventure is just one of the standard Adventure League adventures, or a chapter or 4 hours of expected play of a hardcover, whichever is less. So that's it. That's the AL rules proposal. Simplify, simplify, simplify. Put the power for character advancement in the player's hands. Give them as many options as possible. Make as many adventures playable as possible by instead placing stuff at the character level instead of adventure by adventure. And you end up with these 2 pages of Adventure League rules. Thanks for watching. If you have any recommendations, anything you saw that you liked, anything that you saw that you didn't like, leave it in the comments below. I'd love to hear it. And thank you for watching again.